So, everybody, it's nice to be back. We've got another interview here, and today, once again, I'm joined with my good friend, UK drumming legend, Mr. Steve White.
Hello.
So it's good to have you back, Steve. Thank you. And we're in for a real treat. We've got Mr. Steve Gorman, famous drummer, of course, known for the Black Crowes for many, many years, author of this fabulous book. A little plug for you there, Steve. And of course, sports, and more recently, rock, I guess, a rock presenter on radio. Have I got that right?
Presenter is way better than host. I got into the lexicon over here. That's solid, man. Yeah.
So thanks for having, thanks for giving the time to do this. I really, really appreciate it. So it's great to have you.
You said the magic words, which is, do you have any time? And the answer is, oh, that's all I have, man. That's all I got. Let's talk.
Watching the bank account, doing that. It's great.
Yes, too much of that. Steve, do you want to take the first question? Do you want to fire away?
Well, it's great to see you, Steve. We were lucky enough to have toured together on a tour called the Tour of Brotherly Love in 2001.
Yep.
And it was fantastic. And we really kind of, I think we hit it off. And I'm a huge fan of Steve's drumming. So obviously, your roots are in the South, Steve. The band came together around '84. I always feel you've got a tremendous influence of Al Jackson Jr. and you're playing amongst many others. Can you tell us a little bit about your earliest musical influences and some of the drummers that shaped your style?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm happy to be with both of you. And Steve White, of course, the answer to the question I'm often asked, what would you play like if you had 3 arms? Steve White. Yeah, I started off. It's all Ringo, man. I mean, that's the simple answer. I got a few hand-me-down albums when I was 6, or maybe I was still 5. And the first time I heard Ticket to Ride, I literally started air drumming, and I didn't even know what that was. I just couldn't stop my hands from doing this. And so from 5 to 10, it was just Beatles, and then Beatles solo albums. I mean, I was obsessed. And I do think it stamped an awful lot into my DNA that I wasn't thinking about in a linear fashion at all, which is just serve the song and swing. If it feels good, your job is done. Ultimately, I never went for technical anything. And I'm a self-taught drummer, so I watched Steve's videos of his rudiments, and I think I just lost you. There we go. I watched Steve's rudiment videos, and I just think, boy, this would have been easier if I had known any of that stuff. Like I still do, and I still do stuff. And I haven't told you this, Steve. I watch those, and I literally do my own version of all those very things. And it's fantastic. But I think that when I first started playing and I played a handful of times in college. I literally never owned a drum kit till I moved to Atlanta and bought one when I was 21. But I borrowed a kit and just knocked around and played Ramones covers with friends in college a handful of times. But the one thing, I had Ringo, but then I absolutely had, without thinking about it, I just always gravitated towards, in the rock thing, it was, Charlie Watts, Al Jackson's a huge one. It was always just, drive from the back seat, and the fewer people that notice you're doing anything means you're doing your job better. You know what I mean? Like, you're just serving the song at all times. And again, I wasn't thinking about it. It was just all going through me like that, and I loved the post-punk sort of new wave era. And then I really got into a lot of Southern bands in the early 80s, like REM. I saw them in a club when I was in high school still. And there's a bunch of bands like that. And all the drummers in those bands, there weren't any John Bonhams or Stuart Copelands in the music I was listening to at that time. It was all about the idea of a band. And I did play soccer my whole life, and I was always a sweeper. And I literally viewed my role as a sweeper's role. You run, oh yeah. We don't have to talk about that right now, Steve.
We're not talking football. We're not talking football.
A Liverpool fan here, by the way. So
Charlton fan relegated last night.
Oh dear.
Oh, you know what? I hadn't even heard that. Okay. Well, then again, let's get back to music. So I had all this stuff in my head, and so when I had like a solid Ringo thing and Charlie Watts thing and rock and roll. And then I loved, Otis Redding records. And then it leads you to like, who's that guy? Oh, he's in Booker T and the MGs, and I know all that music. And then, I had always had a wide range of stuff I listened to. But all this to say, when I got a kit and talked myself into a band, it was more fear than anything else. I didn't want anyone to recognize that I really didn't know what I was doing. you know, sincerely. I was like, I thought I was good, but I couldn't imagine anyone else would ever think that. And so I could play happily for days without ever doing a fill. I mean, just, you know, no problem, man. If I'm not going to speed up and I'm not going to slow down, and you guys do the rest. And so you know, I felt like I didn't have time at the grand old age of 21. I didn't have time to make mistakes. You know, I had to learn from things I read about other drummers' mistakes. And, you know, I'd go see a local band, and you see a drummer come out of a fill and not have no idea where the one is. And I'd see that once and go, okay, don't ever do that, you know. And it was coming from such a self-taught indie, very much, you know, not like alt rock as a label, but legitimate indie mindset of, we're just going to play clubs for a few years, and it's really more about the intent than the result. That's how I approached it. And but you know, all of those things added up to me in pretty short order, actually figuring out what my favorite drummers do, and then I found myself trying to emulate them all, you know, from that point on.
Well, I have to say, I've done quite a lot of listening this afternoon. I've been listening to Paul Weller, obviously with yourself, Steve, and quite a few Black Crowes albums this morning. And I have to say, I think your styles are incredibly similar when you're playing. You both, you don't overcomplicate anything for the sake of it, and it's all for the song, it's all for the music. And I know you feel very strongly about that as well, don't you, Steve? That's one.
Oh, totally. That's what it's about. All the rudiment stuff and all the, you know, that's a kind of an obsession of just my personality, really, and the fact that I've got 4 kids and I can hide in the drum room quite and legitimize that, basically. So I'm practicing a lot. But no, it's not. You know, that is it. But I mean, because it's a parallel universe when you know, to go, singers, guitarists, bass players, they don't see drums the way that other drummers see drummers. They see them as, like, you know, John Martin said something to me. He said, when I played on a tune for him, I don't notice that you're there. And I thought that was because you're contributing to the song. And that to me was a massive compliment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, drummer that's been, obviously, if you've been in the same band, if you've had your own band, and probably even more so if you are working on a gig as someone else's hired drummer, the number of nasty looks versus, man, that was awesome. You know, it's like about 100 to 1. They look back like, what the fuck was that? You know, you get, but very rarely do you get the mid-song turnaround. Wow, that was awesome. That just ain't a part of the gig, man.
No. So you did 9 albums with the Black Crowes and some fantastic music, Steve. Your book is brilliant, and it kind of tells things on a very honest basis, you know. And I recommend any young drummer reading the book. It's great. It's fantastic. What I want to ask, though, is what are some of your fondest memories about being the drummer in the Black Crowes?
Well, you know, and I have tons of them. I mean, the book is to me, it's just about people that happen to be in a band. You know, I mean, that's kind of how I approached it always anyway. The context is a band, but it's really about friends all committing to something that they have no idea what they're really getting into. And how long can you go without ever growing up and evolving and communicating effectively? And the answer's pretty fucking long, you know, shocking.
Totally.
But no, you know, the funnest, like I had a very, and you know, a lot of times you don't recognize an expectation until it's not met. You know what I mean? If we all in life have these subconscious expectations. I thought I knew exactly what being in a band was going to be like, and it was somewhere between the TV show The Monkees and Animal House, the movie. You know, somewhere it was just going to be a riot. You know what I mean? And actually the truth is, as a local band in Atlanta for, you know, 87, 88, 89, it was pretty close. You know, there's few things in life better than being a local band with nothing to lose. And feeling like you have to scratch for every step you take. That intent and that desire and that willingness to ignore everything reality is offering and focus on that dream. That was magical time for me, you know? And then I never felt disappointed until we got on the road. And there are moments, you know, you get 10, 11, 12 months into your first tour, and our record was starting to take off after about a year. And I looked around and I was like, I still feel bad if I drink too much. You know, I still get hangovers. That's not supposed to happen. Like, why are you arguing with each other. We sold 1 million records. Are we still supposed to argue? I don't get this, you know. And you know, reality starts. There's like this tapping on your shoulder, and like many musicians, you just keep ignoring it, you know, and you go and go and go. But there was 1 million. You know, the thing I say early in the book, I don't spend a lot of time in the book on the really just funny, hilarious stories, because ultimately every band has those. Everybody has funny moments in life you couldn't have expected. But you know, we all have, any band has their own sort of sense of humor, their own internal language. And so we could laugh about literally anything in the Black Crowes. We could go right from the height of absurdity with anger and tension, and then all be laying on the floor laughing a minute later. We were at a TV show in Paris, a variety show in like December of '94, and the Cranberries were on that same show, and they were at that point just, you know, they had blown up and they were just huge. And we were doing well, but we didn't have like pop hits like the Cranberries. I mean, they were a much bigger thing in the moment. But we were in our dressing room and we're sitting around, because when you do a TV show, you sit around for hours, right? Yeah. And we're just all stoned to the bejesus, you know, because there's nothing to do for hours. And we're just sitting there. And at some point, I have no idea where this came from, but we found ourselves making a human pyramid. Like the 6 members of the Black Crowes, 3 guys got on their hands and knees, and then 2 guys got on top of them, and then Chris got on top. And we had our really nice 6-man pyramid. And we were just going to pose for a photo. Our tour manager had a camera, and this is the most important thing we could possibly be doing at that moment. It really made sense to us. And I remember that we're all on our hands, we're all doing it. And then someone said, okay, everyone pick up your right hand. And we all do that. And the pyramid teeters. And then we say, pick up the left hand, and it's teetering, and we're all laughing. And then all of a sudden, like at some point, we noticed the door to our dressing room's open, and the 4 members of the Cranberries are in the hallway. And you know, just like the Black Crowes' reputation was always like, those guys are wasted and they're kind of weird and Southern and maybe kind of mean. You know, like we weren't the friendliest bunch. And we're all over 6 feet tall. I mean, we're just huge. You know, we're long hair and beards. In 1994, we did not look like the Cranberries. And the looks on their faces, they're just staring at us, you know, in shock. And Yuri Vega, a guy who worked with the band, he walked over to the door and he pointed out and he said, you never tell anybody what you saw in here. And they all, 4 of them, were like, yeah, no problem. They were terrified. And he shut the door. And we literally pissed ourselves for an hour laughing about that. And to this day, I'm just dying to, I know they still tell that story. I know they are like, did you ever remember the Black Crowes? They did a pyramid. No, really, they did, you know. I mean, that kind of stuff happened all the time. But then I'm sure by the time, you know, we left the studio that day, there'd been 2 fights within the band that I've forgotten about because those were so regular. But anyway, suffice to say, we had a blast. And I mean, the music we left behind is great. I mean, the band was a real pain in the ass, and it was great. It was all that stuff at the same time. All, you know, misery and great joy were concurrent bedfellows for the entirety of that band's run.
For me now, the one thing, I was talking to Matty now, is the one thing I don't miss is the travel. What's the one thing that you don't miss?
Yeah, I mean, I always say, like, I don't miss the other 22 hours of the day, you know? I mean, the gigs, God, yeah. But right now, I'd walk out that door and fake my way through a gig right now that I'm no longer in shape to play. But no, I don't miss any of that stuff. I don't miss large group dinners. There's nothing. I mean, I hit a point years ago where I said, if I'm going to dinner and there's more than 4 people at the table, I'm not going. Like I just can't do it anymore.
That's not going to happen for a while now. So.
Yeah, my bad, everybody. Sorry, I willed this into.
Well, I think that tour of Brotherly Love, which went on for quite a while over 2001, was one of the best tours that I've ever been on. It was fun.
Any member of the Black Crowes at that time would tell you that was as fun as it gets. I mean, and with so much buildup internally, at least from our side, wondering what those guys are all going to be like, you know, and everyone puts on their, you know, everybody, you know, everyone's on their best behavior initially, but then we all hit it off. I mean, I say bands are like dogs, you know, you sniff each other's ass for 3 seconds and you know, we're going to get along or we're not, you know what I mean? Like this clicks or it doesn't. And that was a fantastic time. I saw Liam a few months ago in LA, and right away we pick up, you know, I don't think I'd seen him in 10 years, but it's, man, you know, we just get this look. We all do. And, you know, I still remember talking to you, Steve, the first time, because I was like, I thought that guy's name was Alan. And then when we first, and I said, oh, you're the brother. And then I was like, wait, you're Paul Weller's drummer. Holy shit. Like it all, I just was confused and then really excited. And then, and I also remember by the, I want to say third or fourth gig, what was it? But yeah, it was LA. I think it was the third gig. I remember at the stage, and we were all telling stories and shit, you know, really hanging for the first time. And at one point I just remember Noel saying, and it's just to be funny, it's a compliment. He's nothing against Alan, but he said, oh, we got the wrong white in this band, you know, and it was just, it was just right away. You're just, you know, everyone's letting everything fly in every direction. And it was just, it really was a phenomenally, and I probably because it was unexpected, it just makes it that much more special. You know, you go into it thinking, let's see what happens. But it was also, what was it, 4 or 5, it was 6 weeks at the most.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, 6 weeks.
And it ended probably at the perfect time. You know what I mean? You know, another few weeks on the road and maybe it would have started to feel stale or something, but it was great. It was an absolute blast.
One of the funniest things I remember was Liam talking to Goldie Hawn, who was kind of at one of the gigs, like she was Kate Hudson's mum, and saying that I thought you were great in Private Ryan. And she was like, Private Benjamin.
Yeah. She's overlooked that Normandy invasion scene when she takes one right in the forehead.
I have you know, the tour of Brotherly Love, was that a tongue-in-cheek thing? Obviously, I mean, I don't know about the guys in Spacehog. Did the brothers get
They're two brothers as well. There's two brothers.
Yeah,
no, it was you know, and one of them was married to Liv Tyler, and so, you know, there was Liv Tyler wandering around and Kate Hudson, who was married to Chris. It was quite bizarre for me, you know, just to see all this. I'm sure it wasn't for Steve, but it was quite bizarre for me. But it was great. It was a really good time. And then, obviously, we share we've played with a few people the same. One of them I played very, very briefly for, just for one night. That's Jimmy Page, Steve. How did all that come about? You ended up doing all the Zepp tunes and doing the John Bonham thing. How did that all come about?
That started the summer of '99. We were going to be on the road in Europe, and Jimmy was putting together a benefit show at the Café du Paris in London, and it was just a one night for a children's Brazilian street kids fundraiser thing, a group he was involved with. And you know, Ross Halfin, photographer, who's very close with Jimmy, he called our manager and said, hey, Jimmy's looking for a band for a night in London, and I know you guys are going to be here. Are you interested? I suggested you, and Jimmy said, yeah, see if they want to do it. And I think our manager, Pete Angelis, he said yes without even asking what the date was. It was just, the answer is yes. We're canceling whatever's in the way. What's the night? And as it turned out, it was a Sunday night, and we had that we had off. We played Wembley the day before with Aerosmith and Lenny Kravitz and Stereophonics. That's when I met the Phonics for the first time. And then night on a Sunday, we all went down to this tiny club and I think we played about 45 minutes that first night with Jimmy. And that was it, you know, and it was going to be this one-off thing. And we learned, we did In My Time of Dying. That was the one that I was most excited to play. And just, you know, and in rehearsals, we had a night at, what's the place? Nomi's.
Nomi's, yeah.
We're there on Friday night, and I couldn't hear a thing. I mean, I could not get anything to sound right. And I couldn't get used to Jimmy's head, you know, like in my band, if Rich goes like this, that means let's go in 2. And when Jimmy does that, let's go in 4. I think, you know, I don't know. And you don't want to interrupt the vibe by stopping and going, wait a minute, let's get this right. You know, it's just like, well, we'll figure it out. And so when we would come out of both guitar solos and In My Time of Dying, he would give me this look, and I'm like, is it 2? Is it 4? Is it 8? Where are you going? Because I couldn't really hear. We got to the gig, and it was crystal clear, and it was such a relief. I mean, it literally was like, oh, this is going to be fine, you know, and we had a blast. I didn't think anything about that other than this was the most unexpected, nice treat to finish a tour with. What a blast. And then This is in the book, but, you know, a month later, I called our manager to actually quit the Black Crows. I had realized I was done. This is, you know, it's over for me. It's done. And I called him to say, I've had enough, man. It's time to go. And he kind of chuckled, which was a surprise, and said, okay, cool. Well, I just wanted you to know that I just hung up with Bill Curbishley, which was Jimmy's manager. Mm-hmm. And Jimmy wants to tour. So why don't you call me back in 5 minutes? Think about that. And as he hung up, I literally heard him laughing because he knew how much I loved that gig. He knew, obviously, you tell any drummer you're going to go play Zeppelin songs with Page, and it's just like, oh, fuck yeah. Right. You know. And so I called him right back, and we acted like that first phone call never happened. And then, you know, a few months after that, we're starting a 6-gig tour in the States with Jimmy and playing 2.5 hours a night. And then that led to the next year. And it was just it was a blast from top to bottom. I mean, that was the most fun, you know, just simply playing that I ever had, you know. No, I didn't feel any pressure. I just felt exhilaration from the jump.
That's interesting, because that's, you know, when I did that, stepped in for Alan on the Oasis tour, there was just no pressure, and it's a different thing, but it's not your own kind of thing, isn't it? But well, then,
so you know, if Jimmy and Robert and John Paul Jones want to get on stage with me, that's pressure.
Yeah.
That's not what this was. This is Jimmy Page joining my band. I'm already in the band. You know what I mean? And even if we're playing Led Zeppelin songs, we're still going to approach it like the Black Crows did. And so, it's not getting in a room with people you've never played with and trying to figure it out. It's like, we're just learning. We played covers all the time. Now let's play some Zeppelin covers. And oh, by the way, we're going to have a certain guitarist playing them with us. It was, you know, and I do feel, and people made a big deal about it, that it was all down to me and Chris. You know, they're the guys that got the hardest jobs. But I would say that his was definitely more of that than mine, because mine was fun from start to finish. And he left that tour and didn't sing the same way for about 3 years. So he's a lot more wear and tear on his vocal cords than it was on my wrists, I can assure you.
I can imagine Chris really suiting the Robert Plant kind of material.
It doesn't go to that high register. He doesn't have that stuff. But as far as the vibe and the intent, you know, he was having a great time too. You know, and I say in the book, he was ready for it to end. I mean, he just wanted to do his own thing. But at the same time, you know, that was just one of those things, like when it's clicking, it's just the best. It was the best of all worlds. You know, it's like you're living this high school fantasy you never thought to have. And then, when we're doing this thing that I never even thought to imagine before. You know, it was fantastic.
Incredible.
Again, the 7 sort of degrees of separation. I got, you know, another band that I've sat in and played with is the Stereophonics, and with no disrespect to Stuart, who I loved and had some wonderful evenings with.
Yeah.
When I saw you play with the Stereophonics at Earl's Court, I don't think the band ever sounded better. And how did that all come about? And it was such a short tenure, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was about 10 months that started as one gig. You know, not surprisingly. And I like I said, I met those guys in '99 and we clicked right away. I was buddies with all of them. And just like you, I had nights with Stuart that are still sit there on the rankings of the most fun. I mean, he was truly unlike anybody else I've ever known. I mean, you say that a lot of people, but Stuart, and it was just immediate. And we just loved each other to death the first time we met. You know, it was just right there. But they had some issues going back with him, and I think it was in 2002. In fact, there was he blew off a tour of Japan or something, if I'm getting it straight. He literally I don't want to go, and the band went off without him. And they landed in LA a couple weeks later, and Kelly gave me a buzz and said, "Hey, can you come to LA and play a show tomorrow night? I don't think Stuart's going to be here." And they had flown another drummer over to Japan for that tour. You know, I mean, like they had already done 2 weeks on the fly with a drummer, and then they got to the States. And Kelly asked if I could come to LA. And so I was actually already in LA. I was getting ready to move there, and we were looking for a house. And I said, no, I'm already here. And as it turned out, Stuart did come in, so I didn't play. But that started this conversation with Kelly about, it wasn't about me joining the band at all. It was like, what am I going to do with this drummer? And so that conversation was, then I was having that with Stuart too. Like, dude, come on, let's go. Let's get it together. You know, like, come on. And I was definitely older brothering them on this and doing what I could throughout for the next couple of years. And go flash forward like a year and a half later, they're doing a promo tour in the States, without Stuart. He just said, I'll see you for the electric shows. I don't want to do the acoustic numbers. And they were going to like every Virgin store playing, and they had a few festivals, and they had to play them as acoustic sets. And so same thing, they're coming to LA, and Kelly called and said, can you just bring a tambourine to the Virgin Megastore? We can't keep time for shit, you know? And I was like, yeah, you know, I will. And so I went down and just shook a tambourine for 30 minutes. And you would have thought I was giving them all foot rubs. You know, they were and so they flew to San Francisco to play the Fillmore the next night. And Stuart was on the plane to San Francisco, but then he had a little medical issue that had come up. And so then, you know, there's Kelly calling me again. He goes, God, can you come and play the Fillmore tomorrow night? And I said, sure. Yes. And I did. And, you know, we had a long sound check, did the gig. It was good. And then he said, well, what about LA tomorrow? I said, yeah, I'll do it. So that was it. It was 2 gigs. And then they had a few days off, and they're doing some promotion and stuff. It was right before their fourth album came out. And then Stuart decided just to fly back home and get ready for the European tour. He had to go recover. And so then they're like, well, we got 4 more gigs. I think it was Chicago, Toronto, Boston, New York. Can you do those 4? And I'm like, yes. I mean, it's fine. I love the songs. I love the tunes. We're having fun. Like Steve said, it's not your band. It's just fun, you know? And by the time we got to New York, I guess Kelly and Richard had been speaking with Stuart a lot, and they all made the decision, he's gone. And then they kind of looked at me and were like, can you stay for a while? And I said, yeah. And I was heartbroken. I mean, I really was. I had told Stuart right to his face, I go, they're going to call me if you flake out again, and you're not going to come back. You don't want to have me in your chair. You know, it's just not going to be good for anybody. And that was the case. And so I ended up staying for about 10 months. And it was, and during that 10 months, you know, that was I think a really pivotal part. Looking back, it's very clear that was their first existential crisis as a band, for sure. And what do we want to do, and what direction are we on? And Kelly made a lot of decisions about where they were going to go that all certainly paid off. Their next album was their biggest one. They had Dakota from that next album, and it went, but it certainly wasn't in a direction that I would have been suited for or been the best option for, I don't think. And so I had a great time playing with them, and I loved it. And if it had worked out for me to like stay with Stereophonics, I would have been like, sure, great, I love this band. But it you know, we had a great time, and it was pretty obvious after a certain time, like, okay, well, this is not going in the way I would have thought it was going. We'll just see what happens. And as it turned out, they went somewhere else. Yeah. And then Stuart and I reconnected after that was all done. I didn't call him. It was weird to be playing, you know, like I said, I was on his seat for that whole year. And then once I knew that was done, we were fine. And I didn't see him again. The Crows would that. And then I went back to the Black Crows. And I was always asking Stuart to come to see us in London. And he never could, but we texted all the time. I never saw him again, though. And you know, he's 10 years gone now, which I still find unfathomable. I mean, I never lost my affection for that guy for a second. He was the best.
He came to Brighton. That was the last time I saw him. And Alan, my brother, he had so much time for Stuart. He was just, you just always knew that everything was going to go a very different way.
My favorite Stuart thing, I lived in Brooklyn for a while, and we were up there, and he came out to our apartment, and then he was taken off. He was going out to JFK afterwards. I said they were mixing I think they were mixing the Jeep album in New York, and they were all staying at this apartment in Soho. I said, come out to Brooklyn, hang out, and then I'll get you to JFK tonight. So he showed up. We spent the whole afternoon together, and I called him a car to take him to the airport. And just this classic memory of on the sidewalk outside my apartment, and the car pulls up, and the driver is Middle Eastern, and I couldn't understand a word he was saying. And then, or I could understand a little bit, I could get it. But Stuart, with his accent, couldn't get a word the driver was saying. And the driver didn't think Stuart was speaking English. You know, and I was kind of acting as an interpreter between these two. And Stuart, it ended with us laughing so hard. He was just like, and Stuart was saying, like, for all I know, this guy's going to drive me to Boston. How can I trust him? And I was like, JFK. National, and the guy got it. But just the way Stuart would turn anything like that into the funniest 10 minutes of the day, it was endless with him.
Brilliant. So I know we are kind of moving on with time, and you're busy, and it is very, very strange times. And so Trigger Happy, before, obviously, what was going on with that before the lockdown?
Trigger Hippie.
Trigger,
to be.
Trigger Hippie, sorry.
You like it, yeah. It's you learn a lot when you name a band, which is, hey, this is kind of cool twist on words, and no one's ever going to get it right.
I'm just thinking about Trump and RoboCops, the Trigger Happy.
Exactly. We put a record out in October, and we were out playing. You know, we had taken a 4-year break, and it's pretty much a new band. That a band started by the rhythm section, and so Nick, the bassist, and I, we did have the incredible rare treat of firing a couple of singers, which is just, boy, does that feel good for all of us.
Gotta go.
Actually, no, it's a good line, but it's not true. Everybody had different things, and the band just, Nick and I wanted to have a different vibe. Trigger Hippie to me and Nick was always something we wanted to commit to. And in the early years, it was a revolving door concept. It was always whoever answers the phone first and says yes is going to play with us tonight. It was real loose. But when we started putting songs together, we wanted it to be an actual band, something that people wanted to build. And so it took us a while to find the right people second time around, but we did that, put a record out in October, and we were playing clubs all over we weren't going west of the Mississippi River. So, our goal was, let's just in 2020 rebuild the band up to where we were, and we'll just focus on stuff over here. And it was going quite nicely. You know what I mean? It was really good. Band's great. We were having a blast. And our last show was March 7th. It was actually here in Nashville. We had just done a few weeks in the South and just having a great time, and the response was fantastic. But that said, I think it would have been a lot harder if it had been 6 months later. Like if we were if we were in this big growth place, and if we'd put 6 months under our belts, it would have been much more of a kick in the teeth to shut everything down. I mean, that's the silver lining I'm trying to tell myself makes it okay. Yeah. Because I know the number of full-time musicians that I know who it just stopped and they don't have anything else they're doing. Especially here in Nashville, there's touring musicians, not the artists, but the guys in their bands. It's just brutal, man. It's unquantifiably horrible for every musician, and especially a lot of the people that are friends of mine. It's tough.
No, there's no getting away from it. It is. It's brutal. Is the word to describe it. It really is. But we know you've got to run, Steve, in a bit, and I've just got one more question. But have you got anything that you wanted to ask, Matty?
Yeah, I've got, first of all, the album you released with Trigger Hippie last year, some great drum sounds on that. You mentioned Al Jackson before, Steve.
Yeah.
And some beautiful snare sounds. It's The Butcher's Daughter is the song that I keep coming back to. What a great drum. What I have to ask, I'm talking drum techie here, but what snare drum is that? It's beautiful.
It's a Black Beauty. And it's where everything starts. I move away from it, but that's always the first option for me. I've had this thing for 30 years almost. And it always sounds good. It might not be the exact thing you need, but it's every session I ever do, that's the starting point to move away from or to hone in on. Just happened that way. It just turned out. And I'm not a gearhead by any stretch. I mean, I know what I think sounds good, but chances are by the next day I'll go, wait, which one was that? I don't remember. And but that is one staple. I mean, I've said this for years. I have a lot of drums I love, but that if you're leaving me with one, it's that one.
Yeah. And I've got a couple of really short questions, if you don't mind. Okay. And first of all, reading this book, by the way, I'll show it once again. For anybody who hasn't read this book, read it. You're in for a real treat. It's incredible. It's a roller coaster. Simple as that. And I have to ask, have Chris and Rich actually read it? Do you know if they've read the book? Because I've been thinking.
I doubt it. I doubt they've. I'm sure they're aware of some of the things in it. And if they have read it, they would never admit it. So it's a pretty safe no, because you're never here otherwise.
Yeah. And one more thing. I first saw you in '91 at the Monsters of Rock Festival. I was 18 at Donington.
That was my 26th birthday, baby.
There you go. There you go. And I remember being knocked out. And one of the most iconic cover versions for me, and I don't know how you feel about this song, was Hard to Handle. Responsible for I don't know, rock cover bands doing pubs. I'm sure you've heard it a million times as well, Steve, doing this new Black Crowes extended version. How do you feel about the song now after probably playing it more times than Otis Redding's ever done?
I can't imagine any songs had more of an impact on my life. You know what I mean? It's hard to knock it. I mean, there were times when I got to a point after a while where I was all for just playing the recorded version. Let's not jam on this. Let's just do it, hit it, and quit it, you know? And it turned into an epic jam tune for years in the Crows. I was always more interested in playing our own songs for whatever reason. I mean, I'm happy, but to me, it's like everyone loves the song. Let's just give it to them. But we don't have to. We took away from what made it special to me by jamming for 9 minutes at the end of it. It's just that's not what this is for. Yeah. But that said, I thought it was great, you know. And I remember when we recorded it, thinking this is going to be a hell of a B-side. Like, oh man, the Japanese import will really be worth getting now because this will be on it. Never thought it would make the record, much less be a single, but that just speaks to how stupid I was in 1989. I know our producer, George, was listening to this going, oh yeah, all right. You know, but I didn't get that at all.
Fantastic. Steve, do you want to finish off with a question?
I just wanted to say, with a couple of minutes coming up, once all this nonsense is over, Steve, what's next for you?
Well, my radio show is continuing through. I'm able to record it from home, so that's great. That's going to still be around. And then but you know, Trigger Hippie. I mean, if the green flag gets waved, whenever that does happen, you know, we'll reconvene. And I think the first thing we would start to do is record. You know, it'll be a year at least, I'm sure, where it's like the whole touring industry went away. I just think about the mad scramble to book dates when everybody's suddenly trying to book their first tour. And I think the best thing for Trigger Hippie is probably going to be to go just pick a few shows here and there and play, you know, every few weeks we'll knock out a weekend, but the main focus will probably be on getting a new record together or a new EP, whatever. We have a lot of songs and it'll be time, but you know, that's the shitty thing. We can't even really record them. We don't want to go in and record where everybody's walled off from each other, and you know, I just don't know that we would get the right vibe doing it that way. So we'll wait until we're all really confident that makes sense, and then we'll go just take it from there, you know. I mean, I've said this a lot, but it's true. The older I get, the more patient I get, you know, which is a good thing, I think, you know. So you know, I'm not losing sleep over it anymore. It was a little tough at first to pull that plug, but you know, all things in due time.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, as long as we're all healthy, you know, the rest is just kind of secondary, really.
Well, for me, Steve, it's always a pleasure to catch up with you. And next time you're in London, the beers are going to be on me. And
I know that. You don't have to say that at all.
At the Valley, watching Charlton in League One. And League Two,
I've never been. Would be thrilled to accompany you to the Valley.
I took Chad to the so you'll be the second drummer I can take. But stay safe, mate, and great to talk to you and catch up soon.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's so short, guys, but you said before, Steve, I'm busy. I have a doctor's appointment. I wish I was busy.
Go, man. You know,
Steve Gorman, thank you very much, sir. I really appreciate it. And of course, my good friend Steve White as well. It's always a pleasure to share these. So, gentlemen, stay safe, take care, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much to both of you.
Cheers,
Thank you very much. Thank you.